Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRDN. I'm Brian Winnekins, and joining us today is Sheryl Meshke. She is co-CEO of AMPI. Had a chance to talk with Sheryl during World Dairy Expo, and thank you to AMPI. They're one of our broadcast sponsors from Expo, along with Synergy Co-op, Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin, Compeer Financial, the Animal Wellness Center of Buffalo Valley, and Annabis Silo. And Sheryl, while you were here at Expo, you were actually doing a presentation for Expo. Tell us a little bit about that.
I was really privileged to be part of a global dairy symposium. So folks from all aspects of the dairy industry, from all corners of the globe, came together to talk dairy.
What were some of the topics?
Definitely topics were where will the milk be produced? Where will the dairy products be produced? And what kind of pressures are on those regions, primarily environmental?
And, since the pandemic, it just seems like the supply chain issues have really become one of the hot topics globally for all industries.
When our sales team went to Singapore and Australia over Labor Day weekend, we had two separate teams, and they said the most common question was, will you have enough milk? That surety of supply, that supply chain. Of course, quickly followed by, will you have enough manufacturing capacity for our growing needs, for our protein demands? And so that really sets us up for that whole supply chain conversation, not only short term, but long term.
Talking with Sheryl Meshke, co-CEO with AMPI. This last year for the spring flush, we heard that when talking with some folks from CoBank, the spring flush was a little bit lower than expected, which has adversely affected butter production. And we have some butter shortages. Was that the case for AMPI?
I would take a very different perspective to that. First of all, let's think about capacity that has been added as far as cheese capacity in the U.S. Of late, we've had some substantial American cheese, American style added. That takes a whole lot more fat than, say, an Italian, or say you're in non-fat dry milk, and you've got some cream to sell. Those shifts in what is being made may be the biggest contributor to the butter market that we're seeing. So, for instance, if you're putting that $3 fat, that $3 cream into that American cheese, then you don't have that cream to sell to a butter plant or to an ice cream plant. So I think you got to step back and look at the mass balance of where our milk is going. I think more of it is going into full fat products.
And I know for AMPI, there's also been some labor problems, and you can't find enough people to keep the butter plant going.
So in our case, the butter plant is fully staffed. We have 8 manufacturing facilities, and our dairy farmers out there know full well the challenges of labor. I think they're just now trickling to some of the manufacturing facilities. So we have, I think the thing we've turned to, the leading tool that we're using is automation. So where we had an automation capital expenditure out maybe 3, 4, 5 years, we now moved that up to 2022, 2023. And we're not displacing people, we're replacing people. And so that's right now our first focus.
Talking with Sheryl Meshke, she is the co-CEO of AMPI. A few years back, AMPI started Dinner Bell Creamery. How has that been going?
It is a fun fact to share that Dinner Bell Creamery is now the top processed cheese going into China, for example. So Dinner Bell Creamery is primarily on processed cheese slices made at our Portage, Wisconsin plant, and on butter made in our New Ulm, Minnesota butter plant. So those are the two products that we've focused on in the beginning. And granted, a pandemic's not a great time to launch a brand. Most folks just wanted to stock their shelves. Now that we're coming out of that, there is increased interest. And so we're proud to say that that is growing.
We're talking with Sheryl Meshke. She is co-CEO with AMPI. Well, in the U.S. dairy industry, okay, we have supply chain issues, all these things going on. There's also been the beginning of a discussion on the federal milk market order. And for myself personally, I think, I get it when it was first designed back in the 30s, but that was the 30s. It seems to me, while folks want to fix parts of it, it would make more sense to just start over.
So there is no doubt that the federal milk marketing order needs to be modernized. I think that's really the word of the day. Right now, we're dealing with numbers in those orders, those calculations that were established in '06, '07, '08. Just think if we were utilizing numbers on the farm or in our plants based on how many years ago. So definitely needs to be updated, needs to be modernized. But in AMPI, we've long recognized that for a manufacturing cooperative, one that is primarily cheese, butter, powder, we pay more attention to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange than we do to what we're going to reap from any federal order.
Again, talking with Sheryl Meshke with AMPI this morning. So as we look to 2023, what are some of the big plans for the co-op?
We are going to continue to do what we do best. We call it, what trophy do we want on our mantle? And that is that we know cheese, and that's what we do. And being now the largest cooperatively owned cheese company in the U.S., we are very proud of that, and we are equipped to be the product that about 150 brands wrap their packaging around. Those customers, as we look at the landscape, they're demanding more innovative, bold flavors. And so we are very focused on delivering what ultimately that consumer is wanting out of our dairy products.
For 2023, how concerned is the co-op with the current economic issues going on, especially with the inflation part of it? Is that kind of factoring in on your potential plans for next year?
So our number one, of course, we need to be a reliable market for our owners, and we're very concerned about. Let's start at the very core of our industry. What's important? The dairy farmer, the land, the water, the cows. They are seeing input costs that anecdotally we're seeing $2 to $4 a hundredweight higher in some cases. That goes through the entire supply chain, and so there's going to need to be an adjustment that happens. And all of that, while you're trying to maintain that share of the consumer's pocketbook, our share of the stomach, that's really a balancing act. But right now, my greatest concern is those input costs on the farm and then the returns at the marketplace. $20 milk isn't going to do it.
And is there a concern, at least from the co-op standpoint, again, with all of the input costs, but on that other side, demand destruction, where consumers start to pull back? Because right now we're seeing even USDA is saying we're seeing record butter consumption, record dairy consumption, which is all wonderful. I mean, the co-op's got to be incredibly happy about that. And we're like, yeah, but is there a concern that, you have to cover these input costs, or you got to do something for the members? But you might get a demand destruction on the other end.
And there is some weakening in certain circles. Absolutely, those prices we're seeing on the shelves reflect all of those input cost increases. So this time, let's go backwards from the truck that hauled it to the store, the manufacturing plant, the milk truck driver that got it to the manufacturing plant, all very critical. And so it's a balancing act, and we're just going to have to adjust, tinker one tool at a time to try to, number one, make those dairy farmers' livelihoods healthy, and then obviously at the same time you've got to maintain that share of the consumer's dollar, because we need someone that is craving our good product.
Sheryl Meshke, she is co-CEO of AMPI. You're listening to WRDN.